Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business Radio. I am your host, Jessica Dewell of Red Direction. You are listening to program 35 called Purposeful Yes. And I like short titles. At the same point in time, this whole concept of saying yes or no, and everybody focuses on say no already, quit saying yes, blah, 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 blah. But what if we just flipped it around and we were actually just very purposeful about what we said yes to and focused on the fact that where we say yes is where we can create an impact. And how do we do that? And what does that look like? Who knows? We all know. Maybe it's changing for us. And there are a certain set of skills that come into play that we can build and rely on to make a purposeful yes, an impactful yes, and make it easier for ourselves without overcommitting, without getting super tired, and still go down the path that we would like to be going down. Today, we're going to talk about the lens that we look through to get to a purposeful yes, and how our personal values and the values of the company we work for come into play, and what our contributions are from the perspective of our values. We'll be right back after this.
Welcome to the Voice of Bold Business, the show that provides everything smart leaders need to evaluate situations, build relationships, and create solutions. Jessica Dewell candidly talks about the skills necessary to build tenacity and do more with less. And now, here's Jessica.
Tanya, I was going through some books, and look what I found on the shelf. Don't Make Me Think, published in 2000. It was about web development, and it was about laying out pages, and it was about not cramming all of this stuff in there. And I was looking through it, and you know what? It's all still relevant today, 16 years later.
Yeah, well, web development hasn't changed much. There's a little bit different technology, but the coding and the mindset behind it and the design thinking is still there. So.
And it made me think of another book that I know I have around here, but it was not on the shelf that I was looking at, called Keep It Simple, Stupid. Same concept, right? Different medium in terms of how it's applied, but same concept.
If you look at the design today, all designs are very, very simple and crisp. Mm-hmm. And it's made for the person that's going to read it really quickly.
And comprehend quickly and make a decision quickly. And here's the thing, this is the tricky part when we're thinking about how we experience things. When we experience something that is super easy, it was incredibly complex to create behind the scenes. And somebody and somebodies worked very hard to get us to this place where we could look at this and have this easy peasy experience that made us want to stay, that made us want to buy something, that made a connection between us and whatever we were doing with our technology, or signing in for a conference, or getting to and from the bank easily. There are a ton of things that people are doing to try and improve our experience when we are doing the things that we do.
Think about online banking, how much time that actually saves. You don't have to go to the bank to deposit a check. You can do it from anywhere.
And even online banking has come a really long way. And it's easier than it used to be, because people are like, the banks were like, well, I'm just going to give them this way that fits in my system. And it turned out it was easier and better to say, well, this is the system that I need to have, but this is what my customers need to do it correctly, to make it so they don't call us and have support issues, to keep their frustration level and improve their connection to me, the bank. In our last conversation, we're making this a little bit of a part 2. So while we started out with this concept of don't make me think and keep it simple, stupid, we were talking about cross-training, and we were talking about redundancy, and we were talking about being able to take ourselves out of the center and some of the things that come up around that. For us to really be able to get away and to stop, we need to make it easy and simple for somebody to recognize what they can do to make sure that the work gets done when we're not there.
The anxiety behind leaving that work behind is part of the issue, and really being able to let go.
Let's just set the busy aside. If we're too busy to plan, and we're going to go on vacation and we don't have a way to make it simple, the KISS method, if we don't have a way to make it simple, the stuff isn't going to get done right. We're going to be our own self-fulfilling prophecy of us being the only person that can get that job done. If we set aside busy and we just said, yes, we have all of this work. However, here's how the work is actually getting done. And how would I describe that to another person? Because I do want to unplug. I do want to go away. I do want to get a new brain. And I have to spend time and energy working through all of the elements to be able to give it to somebody that would make it very simple for them and make it feel like they're not taking on extra workload, that it's easy for them to say yes and cover. It's easy for them to get it done correctly the first time and keep clients or happy or whomever they're interacting with. Do you have any experiences or stories around that would be useful? This planning concept of making it easy for somebody to take on extra work so it doesn't feel like extra work?
Keeping everything documented. And then even if you're away, having an emergency contact number. So many years ago, I was in charge of a large office. My boss was taking a ski vacation. He left me in charge of all the temporary people in the office. And an incident occurred that I had no clue how to handle. I had to think really fast on my feet. What had happened was one of the people that showed up intoxicated.
Okay.
I wasn't really sure what to do. I was just panicked. I was like, what am I going to do? I called him and he had a very simple answer for what to do. He said, send her home. We'll talk about it on Monday. Sometimes we panic about things that really don't make any sense to panic about. They have a very simple answer, but at the time they seem very critical to us. What if I don't handle this correctly? And we always feel that we need to second guess ourselves. I would have never thought to send her home. That was the last thing on my mind. How do you send her home? Do you tell her just go home?
That's interesting from a couple of different perspectives. One, it's something maybe that you had never done before. And two, it's something that is so unusual that making a call without a second opinion or a little bit of direction is extra scary.
The other thing that was scary to me was that had I sent her home and she had drove home and an accident would have occurred, we would have been liable from a legal perspective. And so that really scared me. That scared me to the core. I wasn't sure how to handle that. So what ended up happening is I told her to go home. She obviously didn't drive to work, thank God. I didn't know that. My colleagues didn't know that. Nobody in the office knew how she got to work. Her husband came to pick her up. So it was a Friday when this happened. On the following Monday when my manager came in, he called her in, he called the temp agency in, and he talked to her. It really shocked me to the core that he gave her a second chance because in my mind, maybe I'm a little tougher than he is. I would have fired her in the spot.
As an employee, as part of a team, coming up with a way to document and share work to cover each other's work is very different than the department head or a manager or a business owner taking a vacation and basically delegating. There is a big difference there, I think, in some perception. Now, if I were to put this KISS model on top of it, it's really not. It goes back to who has the strengths and the skills to cover each of these things, and what are the things that they would need to know, and how do I make it as easy as possible for them so their other work does not suffer by whatever they may be feeling or thinking while I'm out of the office. And I love the concept of an emergency contact number. And so if we're starting, we've really got to take it one step at a time. And I'm thinking about this, and as I was writing notes in preparation for this show, when we take this one step at a time. The very first step would be, what are our personal values? What are our personal values? Which fits into the story that you told about the person who went on vacation that said, we'll talk about it on Monday. And that was it. It helped calm you down, got you directed. It wasn't as big of a deal, but somebody else needed to help you understand it wasn't as big of a deal. And we need that. We need that from each other.
We were talking about the buddy system. It's really getting to know your colleagues as well.
Yes, you're getting to know them, and you're getting to know what they stand for, and you're getting to know how they think. Flipping that back around, I'm wondering how many of the leaders that are listening with us here today actually know and have written down their personal values. Do you have your personal values written down?
I don't.
You don't? This is something that's new. I didn't until last year. But once I was able to do that, and once I actually did it, and by the way, there's a spectrum. There's this is how I live and this is what I want to do. And so this is kind of the lens I'm looking through. And I haven't written them down I've written all the values down, and I'm going to keep them in a binder, and I'm going to look at them once in a while. But there are so many, I'm not going to remember all of the values that I have written down because it takes up a whole page of both. I used to be over here. Yeah, I know how I want to live my life. I know what I want to do. It's generally this particular way. And so as long as my actions are in line with that, I feel like I'm good. And then it comes back to this keep it simple. When somebody would ask me to do something, I would wrestle. I would wrestle with the fact that I really should say yes because they need my help and they have the courage to ask, but it doesn't help me personally. It would just make me overburdened. I would be stretched a little too thin. It doesn't really move me toward any of my goals. Any combination to all of those things would be like, duh, say no. Yet I would still say yes. And I would say yes because of the way my heart felt, not how all of this whole big picture fit together. And not even my heart, more my emotional reaction to that. And it wasn't even my heart, I would say. And so once I wrote them down, all of a sudden, it was like, okay, when every time I say yes to one thing, I'm saying no to something else. When I'm first check is what I'm being asked, does it fit with my values? Which, by the way, I only have 3 because every value can mean whatever it's going to mean to each one of us, right? So bold is one of mine. Curious is another one of mine. Love is the third one. When I'm thinking about that, does whatever I'm being asked fit the value set? Can I give love through this? Am I going to get love through this? Is it going to stretch me? And will I be excited and curious enough to want to learn more and do whatever it takes or not? Does it fit my personality, which is slightly straightforward and sometimes perceived as in your face? It's, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Bold, right? And so if it passes that, I can look at it more. But if it doesn't pass that, I can say, no, thank you. And it's much easier. That's like the first level of that first step that I use to be able to say no, because I know when I say yes, it's purposeful. And I know I will be able to be all in and I will be able to show up. So if you don't, I know you don't, and a lot of people don't. I've been having this conversation now for the past year, and it's amazing how many people don't write down their values. And not that it's not right or wrong. It's, could it help us look at our world a little differently and make the impact we want? And the answer might be yes, and the answer might be no. But we all have work values. The companies that we work for, the ways that we choose to make money come with a set of values. Have you ever worked at a company that didn't have values, Tanya?
Not that I can think of, because if you look at any company that's out there, that's the first thing that they put in their pitch deck.
Do the people who work at the company live the company values all the time?
No, obviously not.
Percentage, right? I think there's 2 things to that. One, it's, do we understand how our personal values actually align with the company values that we've stood up for? And can we? I think a lot of people might like them on the surface, but they don't know how the contribution of each individual person can be lived through these company values because nobody's ever shown them. And that's hard. I think that's really hard because when we don't have our contribution coefficient, somebody may have already thought of that, but if not, it's now my word. We want to contribute. We want to feel useful. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to really recognize how the role that we're working on, the task that we're doing, lives those values of the company. But somebody has to tell us why, and how sometimes. We can always figure it out for ourselves, but if we're not talking about it, there might be different definitions. Let's do an example really quick. If you were to define respect, how do you define respect, Tanya?
Doing unto others as you would like done to you, I think, is probably the fundamental of respect.
And that's how you define it first. How do I define it first? Respect is, I don't have to agree with you, but I will be open and I will be willing to listen and hear what you have to say. So I'm going to come with my own opinion, and I know and understand you have your own opinion, and they may or may not agree. So there's 2 different definitions. A third definition that I have run into around respect actually means, to some people, obey. Do what I tell you to do. You and me and somebody else who thinks it means obey are all working at that company. We're going to each do our jobs differently according to our different definitions of what respect means. If nobody's talking about what respect means in the environment of the workplace to deliver that product, do we actually have respect going on? Is the best work being done to ensure respect happens? That little simple example of just one word in this tiny few minutes can be amplified in so many different dialogue. So my personal values, bold, curious, and love are a combination of them. You might define those differently than I do, which is very interesting. So it comes back to this self-awareness. If we start with our values, we have a little bit of self-awareness. Once we have self-awareness, we can have an opinion. And once we have an opinion, we can figure out how to talk to other people so that they can understand where we're coming from, because we're able to say it in a simple way that builds connection. Let's just say we're a new executive. We've been hired into a company. We've got this team now that's reporting to us. Let's just say 7 people are reporting to us and our team. We have to figure out what's going on and how we're going to interact with these people. We're going to watch and we're going to listen. And we're going to see what drives them. And then we've got to start asking questions. There may be gaps between what people are saying is going on and what's actually going on. And that's a pretty important skill to have, that concept of observation, even if we're not. Let's say we're in our business and you're listening to this and you go, I have my vision, I have my values, and my company knows what that is. We talk about them all the time. Well, can they repeat them, or do they really understand them is my question. And so set it aside and be curious about it to the point of, okay, I hear what they're saying, so now I'm going to watch and I'm going to observe. And is what I say and think they mean as the leader, is that something that I'm actually seeing in the work output and the interaction of the team? When you say yes or no to something, do you know what your intention is around it, Tanya?
I've gotten better at that. I've had, over the last 9 months, I've said yes to a lot of things that I probably should have said no to. I've gotten a lot better at that. I'm a lot more conscious of what it is I am going to take on versus what I'm not, and I tend to take on way too much. You can't do quality if you take on way too much. It's not possible.
I was actually talking about it with somebody just the other day, and I was like, I'm stretched way too thin, but I'm not overwhelmed. I like everything that I'm doing. I got a question, and it was a really good question. Well, how is what you're doing moving you toward your goal? And I had to think about it. And a lot of what I was doing, and a quick self-reflection, I was like, oh, there's more I'm going to need to think about this, because there's a lot that I'm doing. I'm able to show up everywhere, but it's not moving me toward my goals. And so I'm wondering why I'm doing them. And it's going to be very interesting to find that out, combining the things for work with things that I'm doing in my personal life. This intention, the intention of starting, of course, with our values. We want to do what our values are. We want to live what our values are. We want to bring that to the world. And we can start with that, with our intention. So this lens to look through is really what I'm talking about, are our personal values. When we have our personal values, we now can set our intentions. Because if we know what our goals are, we can think about our goals with intention, which means every action we take can be intentional and purposeful. Tanya, how do you look at the world and know your actions are purposeful?
Am I contributing to something in the most effective way? That's how I'm looking at it. And is there something else I could be doing outside of this that would be more effective or more
effective? Okay. And I look at impact. How big are my ripples of the things that I'm doing? Are they centered around the goal, or are they not? Yeah. So that's very cool. And I know you had talked about quality and you've talked about effective. How do you set an intention? Do you just know it and then you think about things, or do you do things and then go, this aligns or not?
I think it's more subconscious.
Okay.
I don't think it's something you kind of know subconsciously that that's what you're doing.
I agree. There is a lot of it that is self-conscious. What I have found is I can do more, I can take on more if I have a roadmap. My roadmap is a mixture of things. It's Red Direction, it's Voice of Bold Business, and it's my family, and all of the goals for everybody in all of those things, and the objectives that each of those projects are bringing to the table and where they need and want to go, and building goals around those. And I'm a big proponent of writing goals down, just because if it's in my subconscious, I don't know if I can communicate it to my team. So the team at Red Direction, if I just have this in my brain, and it's funny, I can totally tell when this happens. It happened again just the other day. I sent an email and I said, take a look at this, we're going to do it. And I got a variety of responses back, the gist being, who are you and where did Jessica go? because I had on this whim. It was more like a shiny object. I didn't use the set goals that we had talked about and everybody agreed to. Now, in the moment, I thought it fit those goals, but upon further review, they really didn't. So I did not stop and look where I shot this thing off and I'm like, here we go. And they're like, no, we're not going there. And I love the fact I have a team that will tell me that. I have a team that will be like, who are you? And this doesn't fit. But if I didn't have those goals written down, they wouldn't know. And they would feel like I was flailing them about in the wind. Those written plans also just provide an anchor that everybody can come back to. And we can bring the intention of each one of us working on different parts of projects back to this goal and this common place, because that's where our communication, our strong relationship strengthening communication occurs. It's how we find our problems. It's how we work through things. Subconsciously, it's very interesting. I've never asked them if they have their own goals written down and their own intentions and their own values written down. I would be very curious because I know
it would be a good exercise.
It would be a great exercise. And I don't know if you know this, but it's actually something I do with management teams, Tanya, is that we take the company goals and we figure out what they're defined as personally. And we look at how a person's individual values overlaps with and how somebody could stand up for and stand with and live the company values as part of their personal, because our work values can't be our life, but we have to be able to live them and abide by them to be able to deliver on the product. So the next step, we've been talking about this. You remember at the beginning I said set aside the busy? Set aside the busy. We've got to make it simple. The only way to make things simple is to think about them. Do you do things? Do you do that? Do you have like a thinking time?
I'm thinking all the time, and my mind is in like 2,000 directions at once. I'm just trying to slow it down a bit.
Me too. And it's interesting because I take all of those, it's like my daydream time is I set aside time where I can just picture all of that stuff. Even though it's happening all of the time, I'm able to filter some of it and be like, ooh, I got to think about that the next time I'm sitting and thinking about that stuff. It's where the next big idea could come from. I gave this example to somebody yesterday. We were talking about something that was getting under his skin. And I said, well, why is it getting under your skin? And he goes, well, because and I loved this. He goes, I want a base hit. I don't want a grand slam. And I thought that was brilliant. I thought that was so brilliant. If we are out there and we're always looking at the grand slam and we're moving these pieces around to figure out how to get that, we might be missing the base hits, which add up and win baseball games.
Yeah, I guess sometimes if we're even going too fast at something, we miss a lot of details that are important, that are really critical to seeing the big picture.
I think the base hits are the equivalent of milestones. How do we know progress is being made? It's by getting to base. It's by getting in a position to score one hit at a time, or one batter at a time, really. So how do you slow down, Tanya?
Walk away for a few minutes and come back. That's what I've been doing. That's been effective.
It's really, and doing something completely different. I could be knee deep in writing an article and then I turn around and I work on a press release, or I go bake something and I actually physically will cook lunch sometimes instead of just going out or snagging a sandwich. But I love walking. Walking is my favorite way to shift gears. So it's more than a couple of minutes, but it definitely changes the pace. It allows things to settle. And what was I doing? Last night I was telling Ryan, he goes, what's going on with you? You're kind of something. And I was like, well, I am kind of something. I went and I laid down because I'm tired, and this was before dinner. So I was going to try and take a nap, but I couldn't. Just the stuff kept bumping around in my ears and wanted to be heard. So I just heard it all. I'm like, I'm really tired. And he's like, oh, well, okay. And then I said, but everything in my head got heard. So I guess I'm okay. And because sometimes we have to do that. We have to give ourselves space to just let the stuff that's bumping around be noticed, and it will then take on a life of its own, won't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you ever been in that place where you're so busy, all of this stuff happens, and when you're not quite sure, you're so busy, but there's no forward momentum, and you take that break, and all of a sudden, all that stuff falls into the correct order, and you actually see the final picture?
There have been times where I'm in a rush to do something.
Okay, yeah.
And then something happens where it's not needed anymore.
Let's kind of apply some of this stuff. If you were to look back and put that lens of, is this intentional? Is it going to help you be more effective in what you're doing? Would that have changed your willingness to start it and be rushed in the first place?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure, because it's usually an event that happens where it's not needed anymore. It's more fate than anything else, really.
Well, the good news is whatever you worked on gave you more knowledge and practice for something the next thing that was going to happen, huh?
Yep, absolutely.
We've talked about values. We've talked about personal values and work values. We've shown an example of how different meanings based off of our own personal experience and our own values. And then we talked about our intention, right? The intention of our goals, the intention of our actions, and the fact that sometimes our intention is very much subconscious. We've talked about moving too fast. Let's tie this back to, how do we say yes and no? What does this filter look like that we can use to say yes and no? How does this all fit together? What do you think, Tanya?
We shouldn't be put in a spot where we have to commit to something immediately. We need to do more research. We can't commit to anything right away. And when you say is a yes or no, it might not be neither. It might be a maybe, or let me see what I can do.
You know what I like about what you just said is that that's my modus operandi, is I'm always going to consider it, but it never occurred to me how we're coming across is instantaneous. And that's where the filter comes in, because, and you just set this up perfectly, because if we have a filter, then we can consider it thoughtfully and understand our impact and our effectiveness by taking an action or not. So you're correct. You just gave an example. Let me think about it and get back to you. That's an example of breaking away so there no immediate action is necessary on our part. And then what do? We walk away and we can look at our values, we can look at our goals, we can look at our calendar. Notice I did not say a pro and con list. Okay? I know people use those and I know they're effective. To me, that just gets us too much in our head. And sometimes the things we're supposed to say yes to are the things that might have more cons right now. It might be harder on my family. It might mean I have to work more hours. It might mean that I have to give up something that I enjoy doing to make this happen. I think they dissuade a lot of people. So what would I do? I look at it and go, I've got the sense, oh, yep, my family is going to be impacted and I'm not going to be home for dinner one more night a week. And that's hard because I'm already gone 2 nights a week at dinner time. And we care about dinner in our family. It's one of our family values. So what do? I actually have to think about this and talk about it and be able to share that with my husband and say, hey, this thing I want to do, this is what it looks like. Can you buy in? Because even if the pros weigh out, if my husband does not buy in, will I be successful? Hell no. It requires, part of our life. So the people that are important in our life, the people that we look to and live with and interact with on a very personal level do have the ability to make us successful or not. So it could be the right thing at the wrong time. It could be the right thing, but it's going to take too much away of something else. And there are a couple of different ways to look at that. If I'm really wanting to do something and I can't because my family is affected and the stability of my family is as important as this thing to me, something has to give and I have to choose. I might be sad about the outcome, or I don't have to be sad about the outcome. I can say, hey, I know where things are and this isn't the right time. So I could be sad for a minute, but I don't have to become that sadness or be resentful about it or anything like that.
Which makes total sense. And then you also need that help. Being at home is another job itself. So you're taking time from that job to do something else.
Exactly. When I say yes to one thing, I say no to something else. And am I okay with that? And are you okay with that? And listeners, are you okay with that? Being a leader is hard in the grand scheme of things because we are a model. And what we model is what people are going to see. And we don't think anybody's looking at us, that they're probably looking at us the most. And so we can build our own personal integrity by having this filter. What's important to us? What are our values? How do we rank things? What are our personal goals? What are our professional goals? What's going to be necessary? And are we willing to do what it takes to get there? Because sometimes what we're willing to do to get there isn't what it's going to take. So changing the goal might be better because it might be the wrong goal. I have a 4x6 card. I love these things. I live by them. Okay, so you got sticky notes, but these are just not very big. And they get lost. They don't stay sticky for very long. Do you know what I have on my card that's in my computer bag?
What's that?
I split it in half. I actually have two cards, so I'll tell you about both of them. I split it in half, and I have my values, and I have my family values. And then on the back, I split it in half, and I have my personal goals, and I have my work goals, my professional goals. Or and actually really they should be my world goals because they include things like volunteer and stuff like that. So I have a 4x6 card cut into 4 quarters, values on one side, goals on the other. And I carry it with me all the time because I have it written down, even if I have to think about it. I mean, there are some things, somebody's like, can you pick up my child this afternoon? I can't do this or I can't do that and I really need some help. I have to be able to look at these things and I have to be able to think about my calendar and I have to decide if changing my calendar makes sense to be able to help the person who asks me for help. And that really is an instantaneous one. So I have this with me. I'm looking at it all the time. And now my goals are second nature to me. And when I change them, I have to carry it around and look at it a little bit more, but it allows me to respond quicker to certain situations. Now I have another card. So now I actually have 2. And on the second one, I call it my 4x6 card business plan. My company values are up here. My mission is here. And the impact the business is making on the world is at the top. And then underneath it are my company goals. So what are the 3 initiatives that I have that I'm leading this company to this year? So if I'm in a department, it might be my department goals and which company-wide goals fit those. And then on the back are my milestones. So I've thought about when do I get to celebrate success? When do I know I've got that base hit? When do I know all of those things are happening? And I can keep track of it and I can look and I can tell you I have about half of my milestones reached, even though we're a lot of the way through the year at the time of this recording. So I'm not getting all of my milestones. I'm not going to get to all of the goals, but it's not because I didn't know where I was going. And it's not because I didn't know what my milestones were. It was because problems came up that had to be solved that changed the timelines. The 2 cards, they don't take up a lot of room. So I'm thinking about this. You know, when I used this when I first came up with this, it was, do I take this promotion or not? Was why I actually originally did this.
With most of us, it would be yes,
I know.
And we wouldn't even think about it. Wouldn't even give it a second shot. It was something that we were working towards.
And I was working toward promotion. And it turned out, it arrived, and it wasn't right for my whole family. And this was a long time ago. I didn't take it. And it hurt. It actually hurt. But if I hadn't written that stuff down, I wouldn't have recognized that I could probably get to my same personal goal at that level some other way, which, by the way, I have done. I did. I achieved it in a whole different way, which I thought was interesting. They, even heart-wrenching ones make a difference.
Yeah.
But no pro and con list.
And sometimes taking a promotion actually costs you more money than you'll make in a raise. So evaluating that.
Okay, tell us more, because I hear what you're saying and I understand the words, but my brain doesn't work that way. So give us more about that.
Okay. At an organization I worked at, you paid for one example is your benefits. You paid your health insurance based on your level. If you took a promotion, your raise would only be maybe $2,000 more if you were on the old salary model. And your health insurance would double from one tier to another, which would be, you'd probably only get $100 more in promotion.
Isn't that amazing?
After taxes. Then you're going to be spending more hours working. If you calculate that in an hourly rate, it ends up being a lot less. So sometimes taking that promotion is not the best idea.
Another place that comes into play that people kind of understand the numbers but don't necessarily understand the bottom line would be buying and selling houses. How do I invest in fixing up this house I'm going to sell to get the most money? But do I actually walk away with the actual increase in my pocket to put towards my next home?
There's that show where they fix houses, and sometimes they end up with a loss.
We've actually covered a lot of ground around this topic of a purposeful yes. I think really what we came away from was we've got to stay out of our head. We've got to keep it simple. We really have to think about how we personally will be making these types of decisions. And we've talked about a couple of filters today and some things to keep in mind that help with that. And really, It's just to start. It's to take the step of having a filter, knowing what we want, having our own opinions, and then deciding what the important factors are for the things that we would say no or yes to. So as we're considering them, what are we going to consider to lean it towards a yes or to lean it towards a no, knowing whichever one we choose is purposeful and on task. You will find all the program notes at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com/P35, or go to the website and search for Purposeful Yes. On that page, you will see all of the program notes, and don't forget to subscribe. Subscribe to your favorite channel, whether it's, whatever that is. All of the options are on the website. We want to be able to deliver these to you when they are out right away. And I want to leave you with this. And I'm curious, let's continue this conversation as leaders and defining what being a leader today means. How do you find your purposeful yes?
Subscribe at thevoiceofboldbusiness.com and get more information, program notes, and past episodes. Bold leaders approach each situation and focus on action to achieve a higher level of leadership. Jessica Dewell, your business advocate, is the host of the Voice of Bold Business Radio. Thank you for joining us.